Well, hi everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. Delighted on this episode to be talking with comics creator Bo Hampton. Bo, how are you this morning?
I'm great, Jason. You doing okay?
Doing well, doing well. So glad to see you. It was wonderful to meet you at Heroes Con as well, and to get the chance to grab a copy of Three Devils. I'll hold up the book right here with the lovely sketch inside.
Oh, I did that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining. And of course, I know you for your work in the world of DC Comics and longtime creator, but I know we're here to talk about Three Devils and a really interesting take, really interesting use of comics. So curious about the origin story a little bit of the book.
Okay. I'll be glad to talk about that. I have something here that I wrote, which is my elevator pitch, which
Hmm.
is only a few lines, but yet I'm of an age where it's hard to commit it to memory. So I'm just going to spit it out right here. 1876, the American Northwest. A young gypsy girl witnesses the slaughter of her family by a vampire known only as the White Man and his gang. A former slave has been transformed by a Haitian witch into a soulless Zuvembi. A carnival freak, billed as the Wolf Boy, has been bitten by an actual werewolf. Together, they create an alliance to track and destroy the hideous entities that haunt their lives or die trying. Three Devil.
Nice.
Now
Nicely
you take
done.
it up.
Yes,
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 you can.
absolutely. The uproarious applause. Yeah. Well, I
Was
love the
that?
supernatural.
Okay.
I love the supernatural elements. Love the combination of these characters and really interesting. I guess Tara's sort of the lead character, but then we also have the
Yeah.
former
That's the
enslaved
gypsy,
person.
the young girl. Yeah. You get to see her grow up in the first couple of issues, which is fun because I get to create her as a kid and do all that. But then, ultimately in issue number three of that book that you held up, which
Hmm.
is the third chapter in that book, she becomes an 18-year-old, pretty violent, and been on revenge and all that. So we get to see her in action from that point on. But up until then, I kind of have to set the story, and she's a kid. She's like 12 when all that happens.
Yeah, yeah. I also love the Wolf Boy character and the way that he comes in. Lots of sympathy that's created there, and of course, in the edition that I held up, we get to sort of meet him. But then I know his story carries further because you have a creative vision for this that expands beyond the book that I held up.
Yeah, yeah. The character, this series was originally done by IDW in 2013, I think, and it was a four-issue comic book, which was collected in a trade. We kept all the files and republished it in that format that you held up before. It was like the European format and a larger book. So those four issues are in that. And then I've drawn one issue, number five, also in that same large format, and that has been printed and it's out. And I'm working on the campaign for Kickstarter for number six. And number six ties up everything to do with Tara, the gypsy girl. Her entire vendetta and all that is resolved in issue number six, which is the one that is on Kickstarter now. And then following that, if we succeed in getting the Kickstarter mounted for number six, which it looks like we're going to, we're like at 86%. And I think it's the last 4 days or whatever. So I think we're okay. But once we get that funded, then I will be working on number six, and I'll be starting to write number seven, which is Oliver's story, which is the Wolf Boy.
Nice, nice. Yeah, you really get the chance to expand with these characters beyond a four-issue arc. So that has to feel good to have the creative freedom to keep the series going, so long as you've got the readership there and the story
Yeah,
continues.
and that's the if, the golden thing about it is, I guess you don't have to rely on somebody in sales at DC or Marvel or whoever to tell you how a book's doing like months later or whatever. You can kind of keep keep tabs on it yourself when you're doing these campaigns, and you can see, what's working, what's not. Become your own marketer.
Hmm.
My friend Jeff Messer is helping me with this, and a guy named Charles Mills is the designer on it. And he's doing a great job too. And we're all like North Carolina guys. So, but you get a chance to really, it's unlike the old days when you just had to wait and wait and wait, and maybe sales were soft, and then you get the bad news, and then you got to figure out a way to kill the book reasonably with a reasonable amount of acumen, and that's hard to do. So this way I can keep tabs on it as I'm going along, and I know pretty much months ahead whether or not I'll be able to continue or not. And right now it looks very promising for a 12 issue series, which would give me 3 issues each for the Wolf Boy and for the Zavembe character, who was the former slave. Um, and each of those would take 3 issues. And so at the end of the day, we'll have an omnibus, hopefully, that'll be like, the big boy. It'll have
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Zuvimbi there. That was a term that I had not heard until I met you at the show and read the book. So curious about some of the history of.
Yeah. In the French, I looked it up in an occult dictionary, and in the French, it means demi, Demimort, half dead, or yeah, half dead. And so, or semi-dead, however you translate it. But his character comes from Robert E. Howard's take on it in the book Pigeons from Hell. There were zombies at that time when he wrote it, which was the 30s or the early 40s, and but there was no direct Zuvembi. I don't know if he made this term up, but it's a Haitian witch who develops this thing called the Black Brew, and her slaves uh, are forced to drink it,
Mhm.
and they become not like zombies, but more like people who are just totally bent to her will and will do whatever she programs them to do. And but they don't ever have to eat anything. They are immortal as long as they are not killed by I think it's lead or or something else. I can't think of what it is, but anyway, they if they don't die in that way, they are immortal. They go on forever. But the problem is that the Zuvemi guy, this former slave, uh, the witch had been brought to the American Northwest, and that's how he got involved in all that. He was one of her slaves, and
Mhm.
she was brought in as the mistress of, a white guy who had gone to Jamaica and was confounded by the beauty of this witch, and didn't know she was a witch, and brought her back, and she started developing the Black Brew to develop her own super army of slaves. And but the problem is that with Marcus, who was the Zuvimbi character, what the way we meet him is he discovers Tara when she's very young after her family's been killed, and he wants to help her. He doesn't know why he wants to help her, but there's something going on where he feels a connection to a human being again, and he hasn't felt that in like 10 years since all this happened. So he's got his humanity back in a very incremental way, and he knows that as long as he keeps her around and tries to help her, he might be able to help himself.
Mhm.
And so that's really what his motivation is. Plus, she's a very likable kid, and all that. And we want to help her. But the fact that he wants to help her is what's unusual, because when he is under the heel of white people in the 19th century, in the American Northwest, he would normally feel hurt and constantly put upon by their attitude toward him.
Mhm.
But he isn't, because he can let it wash over him because he doesn't really associate any feeling with that. It's not an emotional tie that he has to his tormentors. You know.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
the other hand, he can feel something for this kid, and so we're going to see whether or not that's good or bad as the story develops. Because obviously, if the floodgates are open, he's in trouble because now he's a
Yeah.
black man living in 1876 in America, and
Yeah.
he'll understand what all those things were they were saying to him all for all those years, and it'll come back to him, and he'll resent it, and he might go crazy, and he might want to get revenge immediately on all of them, or he might just want to to discover the witch, uh, recover his complete humanity, and the way to do that would be to find the witch.
Uh,
So he's not really after killing her as much as he is using her to see if he can both maintain his ability to withstand the prejudice and become a human being by getting the antidote from her, if
lots of
possible.
great themes there, and love the way that you dig into characters. This is a really interesting trio of characters, sort of a trio of heroes that are sort of a supernatural Justice League almost.
I love a team book. Always
Yeah.
have. I grew up on Kirby's Avengers, so to me, to really show their origin, and that's what this whole thing is about. The first half of this whole series is origin story, but to show how they are what they are is critical, and that's the fun part of it too. They have projects that they do together to try to develop their skills. The Wolf Boy character, they save him from a carnival, from a freak show,
Mhm.
and they don't know that he has actually been bitten by a werewolf. So the reason I drew it or set it up was to draw it because I love drawing the wolf man and the werewolf.
Mhm.
So this way I get to do both.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it's all about fun for me because the more fun I have visually, if I can make it work logically, the more fun it'll be for the reader. And so the Oliver story would be a vendetta, a revenge story because he's never been right, since he's been bitten, and once a month he turns into a ravening horror, and but our guys, once they rescue him, are going to figure out a way to use that
Yeah,
against the white man.
yeah.
So we're looking at universal monsters, werewolf versus the vampire
Mhm.
versus the zombie.
Yeah, yeah, love it, love it. That I love the splash page when we get to see the Wolf Boy Oliver being freed and sort of full on in display. So
Mhm.
it makes sense that you enjoy that visual because that's one of the visuals that still stands out from reading the book.
Yeah, it's a critical moment, and I'm okay with giving it away now because I really want everybody to have been pretty well caught up so that I can only talk about 6 and 7 going forward. I don't want to constantly have to, drag my heels and hope that because originally it was going to be like a mystery that I was trying to keep as to how he was bitten or why he was bitten or if he wasn't even bitten by a real werewolf or was he just this hairy kid who's had his teeth sharpened by a pastor in an old west freak show.
Hmm.
So, but now I've got enough readers and I've got enough people that I've told about this that I'm comfortable, talking about. He has been bitten, so he does have werewolf blood and everything, and he's not just a freak. But on the other hand, you don't know how or why or if that guy if he's going to be able to find this guy that did this to him and deal with that in a way. They're just trying to get help from their devils if they can, but
Hmm.
also eliminate their devils. And for Tara especially, the elimination is more critical than getting any help. There's no real help that a vampire can give to Tara or her family who have been slaughtered by him. I mean, she's just out to figure out a way to remove him from existence, and that's really what it's about. And it's going to take me over a year to finish this whole thing up. So
Yeah,
I got plenty of time to talk to Netflix and everybody else about the eventual TV series, not movie, TV series, which is
yeah.
what we want.
Yeah, yeah, TV series, just like sort of the serialized book will give you the chance to really dig into the characters and explore and give it some nice leg room.
It's the way to do everything, it just seems like with this kind of stuff, unless it's a short form, like a novella or something.
Hmm.
Like Stephen King wrote Stand By Me,
Hmm.
the movie. I don't know what the title was, but it was a novella. It was a short, and it was perfect for hour and 20 minutes,
Hmm.
and really we're finally starting to realize that rather than destroy everything by cutting it down and making everything take out all the great stuff in a novel, let's just go with a short form novel and adapt that as a movie and do everything else as at least a 6 episode TV show.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. Now, you were talking about the book originally being kind of the four-issue arc. What was it like to get to tap back in and expand it beyond that four issues?
Reading the IDW book, the original printing, is that what you're referring to?
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, that was a lot of fun. A guy that I was working with named Jeremy Moeller colored all that, and he did a great job. And he has gone on to develop his career as a colorist since then. But as I was teaching him about what I wanted, he was teaching me how I could get what I wanted,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
the only reason I'm able to color it now, was because he helped me by, listening to me and going for a more flat comic book coloring look, and yet have special effects and things that needed to happen, that are not flat in color for comics, so that are more like real modern day comics, but not overwhelm the viewer with that, because I don't like coloring in comics. It's they're trying to make something that's not really real too real, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, the amount of cut and grad that is used, which is the gradual laying in of the color over an area you've cut out, like your face or mine with the shadows, is too perfect for the line drawing underneath it. The line drawing is an expressive thing that
Hmm.
comes out of my head. I don't want it to have to comport with reality to that extent. And people that understood that back in the day, that let their line work, like Al Williamson and Frank, they would let their line work kind of shine through all that,
Hmm. Hmm.
and kind of rule the day. And then the color would be added, and it would be for mood, and it would be for lighting as needed, if but in a simple way, a very simple way that lets the line work really stand out. And
Yeah.
that's always what I'm trying to do. But in a modern world, you have to give viewers, I have to give them a little more than the old flat color, but I just don't want to take it as far as, like the coloring on your head,
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
lighting being that accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Up to a certain point, a lot of that just looks computerized. And it starts to
Yeah.
blend and sort of look the same. It's great to see what the artist does with the design.
And I mean, not talk too much about color, but one of the problems, see, I like a thin line in my artwork. Like, I don't know what you can see that's behind me or whatever, but
Hmm.
I like a thin line. And you've seen the book, so you know that I'm inking with a brush and a tool. I'm not using a program. I'm not using manga tools or whatever. I'm doing it old school. And that thin line, that's like a lot like the Williamson line or the Frazetta line from back in the day, is hard to color because, the thicker line you have in a modern comic, then the easier it is to cut out an area around it and color the area without leaving, a white area that shines through.
Hmm.
So it's hard for me to color it, my own work, because you have to really get very tight on the line in order
Yeah.
to do that. And you'll notice that most comics don't do that. They have a thick outline.
Hmm. Hmm.
The contour line is a bold line. It's a bold black line, thick, and it's a lot easier to color that way. But if you want the realism that I'm looking for, you have to give up a little bit of the realism of the color and maintain more of the realism of the line work and the
Yeah.
drawing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. And your style gets to come through in that way. You also you've had the chance to grow along with this character of Tara, and one of the parts of the book that stands out is that opening scene where we see her family being assaulted by these vampire creatures. So you build in a lot of emotion right from the beginning. Yeah.
But even so, when you look and see the elongated panels,
Hmm.
the reason for doing that was so that we can get to this point where the girl is she's under the wagon basically. Um, yeah, I can't see where it is. But anyway, she if you see her face right there, I don't know. Yeah, okay. She's
Hmm.
in the wagon on the bottom of the wagon, like a part that is for whatever, and she's hiding down there while they're being killed. And as that is happening, the elongated panels, we see the hole that she's looking through,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
all of that, and that's how she witnesses it without being seen herself. And so she sees all this stuff that's happening. And her mother told her, look, whatever you do, don't say anything, whatever happens, because you're going to be dead if you speak. And so she had to be quiet. And so when the former slave finds her in the wagon and her family all dead, she won't speak. And she's mute for a long time because of it was so important that she not use her voice, that it kind
Mhm.
of mutes her for a while. And of course, she has horrible night terrors and everything else. And he just kind of helps her through that. But what I was going to say about that sequence and what you're responding to, I think, is the setup to be like film. It's
Mhm.
storyboards. You take a horror moment and you decompress it. You make it, you spread it out so that we're looking at it almost in real time, like the way you would see a storyboard that a director would see to set up a film. He would
Mhm.
see the drawing, with each key moment, and they're always in that format because it's film, and it's a long landscape shape. And so I try to use that when I do horror moments to force people to just slow down and let me build the suspense. In other words,
Mhm.
I'm not going to give you a key part of the suspense and then move on. I'm going to give you the suspense. I did that in a book called Sight Unseen. It is really, really powerful. It's a horror book. It's gotten really good reviews. We have it be an option now. It may eventually be a movie. We're getting another contract for it going, and we'll see what happens with that. But there's a good chance that Sight Unseen will be made as a film. Robert Tennell wrote it, and I drew it based on my plot idea, and it was like all a lot of that, just
Mhm.
broken down so that you can actually be a little bit spooked by it,
Yeah.
be a little bit, ooh, maybe I need to stop reading this. This is
Yeah.
pretty bizarre and powerful, because of that technique,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
almost never gets done, you know, in comics. It almost never has been done. So it's rare, and I use some of that in this. But with this, so unlike Sight Unseen, which is straight out horror, this mixes horror with comedy and action and adventure.
Yeah.
The Fantastic Four, basically, which is
Mhm.
what I'm always going back to. I want the disagreements. I want them training. I want all of the problems that a group has,
Yeah.
the personalities, the love interests that might come up. I want all that, so I couldn't just be hard. It had to be the action, the comedy, and the just to be able to treat it as a team adventure series,
Mhm.
that allows me to have fun with it like that. That's it's much more fun for me to do that than straight horror. Although horror is easier in a lot of ways because you don't have to worry about all those personalities and trying to weave comedy in. Comedy is such a fun part of this series, but it's
Mhm.
rare. I mean, I just you have to choose your moments and you have to build it up and make it work. But there are comic bits, and that's what makes it real. And the whole thing is character, character, character. For me, as a writer, I finally written enough stuff now to where I can develop character and I can make that the crux of it, so that you, Jason, or even better, this lady named Tina Hager, who was my first reader, female reader of the series, really, really, she loved, and I was just blown away that she responded to it as much as she did, because so much of it is written from the standpoint of I've always wanted to be able to get a female reader to like it, the stuff that I do, but they've always been reading the stuff that was more aimed at uh, young boys or old men that are still young boys.
Right. Right.
It's always been named as that. And so this is a lot more adult, a lot more, from a female perspective because Tara is the main character. So that is hard, but it's fun, and I'm succeeding. I'm slowly. I've got 3 or 4 women now that are reading this and really enjoying it. And
Wow.
out of the 150 backers that we have right now, if I can get 10 or 15% of them to be female, and I have, I have really made it. So I'm hoping that I'll get some more of that going as we go forward. People that can appreciate something other than just having a head smaller than your bicep and
Right.
running around and beating people up all the time. It's going to be
Yeah.
a lot more than that, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I love what you're saying there about both the technique, but also getting the chance to build character. And what a great way to do that with a team book where characters get to sort of reveal who they are as they're talking with each other and working through things
Right.
together.
I mean, Stanley and Kirby, they knew it. They knew it then, and they did
Hmm.
it beautifully. And the X-Men, you can't beat those. The training for me, it's the origin stories. Their
Yeah,
training, or Ben Grimm having a cup of coffee. I mean, sitting around. That's comic. That's where it always we needed more of that then. We got a lot of it, but we needed more of it then. And Marvel became, just a parody of itself, and eventually had to have action happening on every page, and so you kind of lost a lot of that. But my youth is just, I'm thrilled to be able to bring in, that feel into modern comics, whenever I
yeah,
can.
yeah. I know that we're limited on time. We have about 10 more minutes. So I want to
Yeah.
give you the chance to talk about, we mentioned Heroes Con, but spaces where you like to connect with fans, either in person, online. I'll of course
Mhm.
put the Kickstarter link in, but anything like that that you'd like to mention where people can find out more information about the book.
Well, I appreciate you doing that, Jason. One thing I wanted to say is that starting in October, there'll be an Italian version. I don't know where you wind up with your stuff. I guess you probably are seen in Europe, but
Hmm.
um, but there will be a European, at least an Italian edition that starts in October, and it'll come out yearly every October until I run out of stories. But I'm happy with that. But yeah, the Kickstarter stuff is um, I did my Bo Hampton Fantastic Adventure Volume One book last June, and I did the Three Devils books that you saw, and the Bo Hampton Adventures Fantastic Adventures Volume Two is going to come out in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I'll have that whenever I go to shows, as well as the Three Devils stuff. And the only other show that I'm doing this year is going to be Baltimore,
Hmm. Hmm.
because it's a really good comic show. I just did Heroes, but that other than Baltimore, those are the only two I'm doing this year. And a lot of that has to do with just, the workload for Three Devils is, I have to sit there and ink and draw, and I can't just do it, at a show like with markers, because I need dip pens and brushes, and I can computer color it myself, so I have to be here. But if anybody could jump on that Kickstarter that we're doing for the current book, what they can do, what Jeff and I have set up, is that it's a library of the early stuff as well. So that book that you showed is available. Number five is available. Number five is this.
Hmm.
I think that's probably one of the ones you're going to show as an image anyway. But that's number five, and then I'm working on number seven, some images for that, but I really haven't gotten that far into it. I'll still have to draw number six. But the Kickstarter for number six is what's happening now, and we have 4 days. It ends this Sunday. We have 100 and something backers. We're trying to get at least 125 backers, and if we can, we're gonna, make it worth their while. But all that is available to see, on the Kickstarter itself, on the site.
Nice, nice. Well, anything that we've missed in the talk through that you want to make sure to mention before we close out?
Um, I would love for somebody to let me know how I could recover the source for where somebody hears something. Like, say if you had a reader or a
Hmm.
viewer, and they if they would just always just say, "Oh, I saw it on Jason's show," or if anybody checks in with us, even if they don't buy the book, but just to let us know. Uh,
Yeah,
it's so hard to ever know. Nobody remembers to tell you where they're coming from. With any of this stuff, and I feel weird asking all the time, and I don't want to push it too much, but yeah, I'm always curious as to how I can figure out ways to do more of it. And it looks like I'll be able to, because I think this will be successful. If you have any ideas of where anywhere else I can push this, or if your viewers do, help us get the word out, that'd be awesome too, because I'm just really getting my feet wet with the promotion of it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, it was Heroes Con, getting to walk by you and talk about the book, and I wanted to meet you anyway.
Mhm.
So that was the way that I connected with it. But absolutely, if folks out there want to get in touch with you and uh, kind of let you know that they've heard the message, and I can also share some additional spaces, some places where people can share content as well.
Yeah, any sharing that gets done is great, from anybody and from you. I really appreciate it very much.
Okay. Well, I think that wraps us just a few minutes early, but glad to talk with you and glad to have you back anytime.